Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith. Today, I am talking about Squirm by Richard Curtis, based on an original screenplay by Jeff Lieberman, published by Encyclopocalypse Publications. That's a mouthful. Squirm. It's killer worms. Do you need to know any more? Well, I'm going to share a little bit more with you. But before I get into it, for the too long didn't watch folks, I gave this book. Actually, I haven't given it anything yet because I just finished it. Decided to record my review on a special day since just happen to be wearing my Squirm shirt. But I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. I liked it, but that's as far as I can go. Now, why, you might be asking yourself? Is it only 3 out of 5? It's killer worms. Eric, you love killer animals. Well, let me tell you. First of all, in the book, we've got a cold open with this kid, Roger. His father owns a worm farm and a bait shop, and some stuff happens. Then we jump ahead about 10 years or so, and we meet Jerry, a young woman who's very excited because this guy is coming from New York to their town in Georgia to visit her, but there's a huge storm, and an electrical line comes down and is shooting electricity into the ground. That can't be good. So after the storm, she has to borrow a truck from Roger, who was the kid at the beginning. Now he's grown up and he's kind of creepy, but she borrows his truck so she can go and meet this guy, pick him up from the bus, which might not be able to make it into town because of all the flooding from the storm, all sorts of stuff going on. And some weird things start happening. People start disappearing. Worms start biting people. And it's a fight for survival in this small Georgia town. Really not going to say too much more about the plot, I don't think. So, 3 out of 5 stars. It's a fun story. I love killer animals and killer worms, right up my alley. I did not watch this movie. I tried to find it on streaming. The only way I could watch it is if I downloaded another app, Pluto TV, I think it was, and there was another one that I could get a free trial to watch it. I just didn't feel like downloading another app to my TV just to watch this one movie. I may pick up, if I can find like a Blu-ray of it somewhere, maybe I'll pick it up. I would like to watch it. But I haven't watched this movie, so this is the fifth out of 5 movie novelizations that I've read in a row. My book bundle of movie novelizations. And it's the only one that I have not seen the movie for. I have seen parts of it here and there. So I can't compare it to the movie. All I have to go on is the book. It's an interesting story. The worms have been driven wild because of the electricity that's pumping into the ground, essentially, and they're killing people. Not really giving anything away. For the most part, it's written well enough. We're getting into the heads of the characters, which I like to see because, as I've mentioned in the other reviews for the other novelizations, unless you have voiceover in a movie, you're not getting into the heads of the characters. All you have to go on is dialogue, acting, facial expressions, things like that. But here we're getting characters' thoughts, motivations, and things that we're not necessarily going to have in the film. So that's good. It's not just the author describing the film to us. But, and again, I can't compare it to the movie, but some of the things that happen in the book are bothersome to me because, well, for example, some people fall into a mass of worms and are dead instantly. Other people fall into a mass of worms and survive almost unscathed. Or there is a character that's knocked out unconscious for an undetermined amount of time, but it's somewhat substantial, I guess, depending on your perspective. And yet the worms don't get it. He wakes up and he lights a match, and there's worms sticking out of the ground, but they didn't even touch him. And yet, again, occasionally, people fall on the ground and are instantly covered with worms. Now, that's a movie problem, I assume, transferred to the book, but it's still a storytelling problem. My biggest issue with this book, though, and it's something that I normally wouldn't bring up. I have to pull out a little notebook here from the arm of my chair because I wrote down a couple examples here. There are too many problems for me to ignore, so I'm going to mention the horrible amount of typos, incorrect words, missing words. It's too much for me to ignore. And I don't know if this book is simply transferred from the original. The book originally came out, I think, in '76. So Encyclopocalypse does a lot of brand new novelizations, but they also reprint old novelizations. This is one of the old reprints. And so I don't know if these problems are from the original copies of the book and they just transferred everything and you got what you had back then, or if they're new problems, something that happened in transferring it from the original to this new edition. I don't know. But it's problematic. If it were simply that it was transferred from the original, I wouldn't mind it as much if there were, say, an editor's note at the beginning saying, this is the original manuscript with all of the problems in the original publication. We're offering it to you as is. I used to belong to a book club that was a first edition book club, first edition reprint book club. And, excuse me, I remember like Great Gatsby is the one that I remember getting, but I had a few that were exact duplications of the first editions of these books, and you got a little thing with notes pointing out, here's some of the problems that they had with the first edition. These are the things we copied down. Here's on page such and such, there was this mistake. But it was all left in there. If there were a note saying that was the case, I wouldn't mind so much, because then I can tell myself, well, I'm looking at a replica of something from 1976. But that's not the case. There is no note. So, in my opinion, then, they should have fixed all this, again, if it was from the past. But I wrote down just 3 incidences of the wrong word being used. And there's terrible punctuation. There's periods in the middle of sentences. There's quotation marks in the wrong spots, commas in the wrong spots, words put together, words separated by a single word separated, with a space in the middle. But just some of the misused words that amused me. There's our main female character, Jerry, is sitting in a truck. Her potential boyfriend, her visitor from New York, has gotten out of the truck to look at something, and this guy, Roger, is coming up from behind, sneaking up. And it describes him as being behind the cat. He's coming up from behind the cat. There's no cat in this book. Um, then there's another place where uh, the guy from New York, for some reason I can't remember his freaking name. I want to say it's something, but I'm not going to until I double check it. Yeah, it's Mick. Mick is making some noise and basically says the noise he's making enough noise to make the dead. And then continues on, comma, blah, 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 something about waking the dead. But he's making enough noise to make the dead. And then my personal favorite, the sheriff is making out with this woman, and he is grinning his pelvis against hers. I don't know how a pelvis can grin, but he grins his pelvis against hers. I found that very funny. There's also a wince comes from someone's mouth. So, yeah, a lot of these types of problems. Again, too many to ignore. If there's a few typos here and there, that's fine. No book is perfect, as far as I know. But there are far too many for me to not mention it and for it to not have affected my enjoyment of the book, because it would get confusing. There's a period here, but now it makes no sense. And it's not capitalized after the period. Oh, it's just a period, random period in the middle of the sentence. So again, if this was an exact copy of the original publication, I would have liked a note telling me that so I could look at it through that lens. But aside from that, we can set that aside. It's a well-written story. The characters are interesting enough, if not fully fleshed out. Some of their motivations feel like they are simply there to drive the plot forward and not the actual motivations of a rational human being. Excuse me. But killer worms, man. I love the worms killing people. And there's some interesting things that happen. It's a quick read. It's 174 pages. 174 pages. In the back, there are photos from the movie, photos of advertising from back then. I like a little section like that. As a little side note, off topic slightly, I didn't mention that in Scared to Death, the novelization for Scared to Death, there were also photos, both from the movie and behind the scenes in that book. I should have mentioned that in that review. So, after you hear this, just if you've watched that review, edit it and add that little bit that there's photos in the back of that book. I like the cover. I like the mass market size. Encyclopocalypse typically makes two versions with a trade paperback size and a mass market size. I wish I had all the mass market sizes, but I didn't know that they were doing that when I started ordering their books. So about half my novelizations from them are trade paperback size, half are mass market size. And frankly, I think the cover on the trade paperback size is better than this. Although I like this cover. I like the cover on the other version better, but I still go with the mass market size. Anyway, it's an interesting story. I love the killer worms. The characters are fine. They're not the worst. They're not the worst written characters, but they could have been better written. There are some things that happen that are simply to drive the story forward, but actually don't make sense to me, and just a lot of problems with the actual manuscript. And again, don't know. if it's from the original or if it's something that happened when they were making this. Um, so that's pretty much it. That's Squirm by Richard Curtis, based on an original screenplay by Jeff Lieberman. I hope to see it someday, but for now, this is what you get. 3 out of 5 stars. Uh, I like Encyclopocalypse. Generally, I like their books. There was another novelization they have that I may have only given 2 stars, um, but some of them are absolutely fantastic. So read it if you can get past all the problems with the typos, the wrong words, the horrible punctuation, and it's not every page. I don't believe the horrible punctuation could be, but I don't think it is. If you can handle that, I know some people aren't as bothered as others. I recommend it if you like a killer animal story. Squirm is a fun story. So, question for this video, recommendations. If I was going to make recommendations, it would be other killer animal books, which I've done plenty of times before. If you really want something similar to Worms, really done right and done well, Slugs by Sean Hudson. I believe that's how you say his name. And then, of course, there's Rats by James Herbert. All sorts of great killer animal books out there. Question: have you seen the movie? How is it? I know it's pretty low budget, and trying to remember how much. I think I've seen the big climactic ending, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, put those in the comments below. If you're really bothered by too many typos, wrong words, horrible punctuation, let me know about that. Or if it doesn't bother you at all, let me know about that. All of that in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter... nope, no Twitter. See, I'm doing this on a different night, and it's throwing me off. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. And that's all I have for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith. And until next time, read more books.